Hello, everybody, and welcome inside the Edward Jones Chatting Cage. I'm Jackie Redmond, and this is a very special edition of the show because, of course, it is trade deadline day in Major League Baseball. So we have not one, but two guests joining us for this edition of the Chatting Cage. Two very special guests, might I add. Jim Duquette and Jonathan Mayo in the house to break it all down. I'm going to start off with this. I know you've consumed a lot of information today, but a deal that you've liked the best so far over the course of trade deadline day?
Well, there's a lot of them. I really like the Archer to Pittsburgh for Tampa. I like it both ways. Like we don't really see a lot of deals like this at the deadline that are going to help both teams right away. So Austin Meadows and
Tyler Glasnow.
Tyler Glasnow, the big pitcher. Those two guys are going to help the Rays now, and Archer is going to help Pittsburgh now. So I kind of like that one. It's a little bit more old school when you see these deals help at the deadline both teams right away.
Yeah, I think that's the obvious one, and it's the one that's probably took people the most by surprise. First when it seemed that the Pirates were the team that were going to be all in, and I mean, this is a trade that I think people thought the Pirates maybe should have made 3 years ago. Now that they're all in now, based on where they are, is a little bit surprising, but it also gives them a pitcher who's still under control for a little while. So it's not just a 2-month rental. I don't think they would have gone all in like this if that had been the case. I'll throw a smaller one out there. I thought the Wilson Ramos deal. That was the Phillies got him for virtually nothing.
Right.
And I know that he was hurt, but he's coming back. He's a really good big league catcher. Those are hard to come by. So smaller deal, just that from my world and the prospect world, they didn't have to give up a whole lot to get him.
And we knew the Rays would be busy. Everyone thought Chris Archer would be on the move. The question was where and when is this deal actually going to go down? And according to you, is a very fair deal, which is the name of the game for both parties involved. We are inside the Edward Jones Chatting Cage. If you want to send us a question, you can head to Twitter, use the hashtag Chatting Cage. Or if you want to join us live on video to ask your question, you can hit the green button and sign up or log in to do so. And with that, we actually have a fan question right now. What's your name and what's your question?
Hi, my name is Leo, and my question is, why do you think the Pirates were the ones to acquire Chris Archer?
Oh, okay.
That's a good question. You know, I think mainly, and there were a lot of teams in on Archer, obviously, but I think for what I just mentioned a little while ago, because they got major league talent back versus getting prospects back, I think that's the overall. The Rays, they are not going through a full rebuild. They've done a great job this year winning and being above 500 when I thought they were going to be an 85-90 loss season. So to be able to get two major league pieces right away, that's more valuable to them over not only this year, but over the next couple of years. I talked to their GM, Eric Neander, over the weekend, and he said that now and over the next couple of years are more important to them than any other time, over the recent history. So that's why I believe the Rays ended up pulling this one off with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the fact that in Meadows and Glasnow, you have two young guys who are going to be under control for a long time, but they've shown that their tools work at the big league level. Maybe Glasnow hasn't become the frontline starter people thought he was going to be, but he's been pretty good out of the bullpen by and large. The command is still an issue. I think Meadows in his time up showed that he's ready to compete at the big league level. Add in the fact that the Rays got Tommy Pham from the Cardinals, and they've added 3 big league pieces when everyone thought that they were going to be full-on sellers. So they kind of bought and sold at the same time. I think they've done a very nice job.
And what does Tommy Pham bring? Because that's one of our questions from online. Someone wants to know kind of what he brings to the table.
Well, when he's at his best, I mean, he's as toolsy an outfielder as there is. He can do a little bit of everything. I mean, I think he showed what he's done in the past for St. Louis. I think Tampa's hoping they can sort of recapture some of that. He's been a little streaky this year. But,
baseball will do that to you.
Yeah, but listen, he's got a big league resume. Right. He doesn't cost a lot of money. They can plug him into the everyday lineup right away. I mean, I think that checks off a lot of boxes.
Last year he had over 900 OPS. He had a career year. And now this year he had a down year. I think the OPS is 200 points less. But he's athletic. He runs. He's a little bit older. He's like 29, going to be 30 for baseball terms. But the other thing is he provided a leadership with St. Louis. I was a little surprised that the Cardinals were willing to move him. So he'll add a nice piece. When you look at him and Kiermaier, I don't know if they're going to hold on to Gomez in the outfield, but that trade in particular was a little surprising to me and a good one for Tampa. Not necessarily looking at what St. Louis got back. I was really shocked that they were able to make that deal.
Yeah, well, St. Louis has Tyler O'Neill in AAA with 30 homers or whatever he's up to now, so I think they felt comfortable, at least from a talent standpoint, that they could fill that void.
Bringing the good stuff to the table here. That's why you're here.
It's not just for my tie.
I like the tie, though. I will say, I do like the tie.
That. I should have worn one.
Nah, it's all right. It's all
Hey, it's balance, right?
Right,
tie on that side, no tie look on this side. We're good. Obviously, we are inside the Edward Jones chatting cage, the trade deadline edition. And before we went live, gentlemen, we had a trade happen right before we walked into studio, and that's the Jonathan Scope deal. Your instant reaction to that?
Well, I love Scope. I've been watching him over the last couple of years down in Baltimore. He's really good at second base. The talk, just as this deal is broken down, and we'll wait and hear what the Brewers have to say, but they're talking about him potentially playing a lot of shortstop.
Okay.
And he's only played about 20 games in his career at shortstop. He's been primarily a second baseman. Now, he played in the minors at shortstop, but if he's going to play short and you take Travis Shaw, who was a third baseman, now he's over at second, and Moustakas at third, there's a lot of lack of range defense in that infield. But now the Brewers, they shift a lot. So I like the offensive upgrade. On the defensive side, if he plays second base, he's an upgrade there. But then does Travis Shaw go to short? There's some things we have to sort out from the Brewers side. And I didn't think they gave up a ton on the minor league side. What was your feeling on the package they got back?
No, I don't think it was too bad considering how good Scope has been for a while. Yeah, I think with the shifting nowadays, it doesn't even matter where you play. Half the time Scope's going to be on the right side of second base anyway. Moustakas is probably going to be moving. I mean, it's all moving parts. Ortiz is a good arm, but he's an arm that's moved a couple times now. So he's one of those very good, but not a guy who's untouchable. So I thought that the Brewers didn't have to give up a ton to get him. I think everyone thought Milwaukee was in the market for some pitching help because their offense is already pretty good. But if that market had dried up or they couldn't get in on Archer, then to get a guy like Scope very last minute, I think was a good get by them.
Scope, officially a member of the Brew Crew. As we get to another fan question via video, what's your name and what's your question?
Hi, I'm Joseph from Long Island, and I was wondering, in your opinion, what team do you think has benefited most from deadline trades overall?
Okay, who had the best deadline, guys?
Well, I mean, they were pretty active. By the way, love the hat. Always love Mr. Matt on the hat, man. Love it. I would say this I like what the Dodgers did. They started to throw a bunch of guys down. You see Dozier going over there at the end, Machado. I like impactful type of guys to add to their lineup. They added John Axford to their bullpen. They needed some bullpen help. So when you look at their overall kind of need, and they didn't go over the luxury tax, which was a goal of theirs too. So I'll throw a little shout out. I mean, there are a lot of teams, but the Dodgers stand out to me.
I mean, the flip side of that, obviously, the Baltimore Orioles just completely remade their top 30 system. I don't know that they got the most bang for the buck that they could have, but they needed a lot of quantity and quality. I like Yusniel Diaz a lot. They got from the Dodgers in the Machado trade. After that, it was more volume and less elite level players, but they needed a lot of players. They got mostly upper level players. And then I'll throw in one wrinkle answer, and that's the Yankees, who are buying for sure. They added some nice pieces. They're big, but they also added $2.5 million in international bonus slot money. Yeah. So not only are they helping their big league team out, they have a lot of extra money to spend in Latin America, where they've been very successful in past years. $2.5 million for the Yankees can go a long way. They're going to add a lot of really young talent to the back end of a system that's already pretty good.
And it's the one thing to remember on deadline days, too, is that the assessment on trade deadline day is always much different than the assessment you might have a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, depending how some of these prospects or the money that they spend on future prospects ends up turning out. All right, time for the EDJ question of the day. Looking back, was there a deadline deal at the time that you think benefited all parties involved?
So, I go back, now this is going to be a while, probably 10 years ago now, almost, to this deadline, 2008 in July. CC Sabathia was with the Indians, and Anthony Castrovince did a great article on this recently for MLB.com. He went to the Brewers in the deadline. They were in the chase, and he pitched them pretty much all the way to the postseason. But he pitched every third day down the stretch. I mean, they just used him.
Crazy.
He then, at the end of it, signed a $160 million deal as a free agent to go to the Yankees, so he benefited out of it. And then the Indians, they thought they were getting back a prospect in Matt Laporta that was going to be pretty good. You remember him, certainly. First-round pick. He was, I think, at that time, number 7 overall in the game. But Michael Brantley came over in the deal, and he ended up being the best player in the deal. They got a couple other players, Zach Jackson, Rob Bryson. But Brantley ended up turning out to be the big surprise, I think, overall, even though I remember seeing him as a young player, but I really liked him as a hitter. I didn't think he turned out to be this kind of player. So I think it helped both teams then.
That's a great example of sometimes you never know what the best part of the trade is going to be until years later. I think the one that jumps out for me is a little more recent, but I'm a lot younger than Jim is, so it makes sense that I would do this.
I like that you're throwing that out there. Well played, sir.
Thank you very much. Well, people wouldn't necessarily know by looking at us. But, you know, you look at what the Cubs and the Yankees did. When the Cubs got Aroldis Chapman and they gave up Gleyber Torres, who was one of the top 3 or 4 prospects in the entire game. So that was a lot to give up for a rental. But they rode Chapman in that bullpen, and they won a ring, right? So mission accomplished there. Yes, the Yankees got Chapman back, you know, so that definitely worked to the Yankees' advantage. And they got Gleyber Torres. But the Cubs did what they wanted to do in making that deal, I think. It was, you know, they got what they wanted, and they were able to hoist a World Series trophy as a result. And then if you want to go way, way back, I always like looking at that Jeff Bagwell for Larry Anderson trade.
Who's older than who now?
Well, my parents
back into the archives.
I've only read about that one.
My parents told me about that.
I was in college when that went down, so yeah, there we go.
I wasn't even around. We are inside the Edward Jones chatting cage. If you'd like to send us a question, you can head to Twitter and use the hashtag chattingcage or hit the green button to send us a question and join us live here on the show. With that, we do have a guest joining us right now. Lou, you've been on this show before. What's your question?
Good afternoon to you all. And my question for these gentlemen is, why is it that the Nats did not trade Bryce Harper before the deadline?
There it is.
We talked a lot about the Nationals over the last couple weeks because they've been underachieving. I would say a couple things. They were getting a lot of pressure, the front office was, and really because of the way the team has performed to do something, to maybe trade Harper. But I can tell you, being in the front office, and when you are wired to win and you build a team that you still believe in, and you look around and you feel like you can catch the Braves and you feel like you can catch the Phillies, boy, it is really difficult to take your star player and try to trade him and try to move him, especially when you're 5.5 games out of first place. That's not a lot of games to overcome, especially with the way they're going to end up matching up against each other and playing each other down the stretch over the next 2 months. So I totally respect Mike Rizzo, the job that he's done, and the winning that they've done there. He's the winningest general manager during his tenure, certainly over the last 6 years during the regular season. So I didn't necessarily think that was the right move for them. I would have they moved Brandon Kinsler. Maybe they could have moved another reliever, but I didn't think they should move Harper personally.
Yeah, I think especially because Harper has underperformed this year, they were not going to get the kind of return. Granted, he's going to be a free agent and he's going to command some ridiculous contract.
That's the fear, right? Is that they lose him for nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think they would get the return that you would think you would get, even for a rental, because if Bryce Harper goes someplace else and gets hot, he can carry any team in baseball for 2 months. You know, so any team interested obviously was hoping that would kind of light a fire under him and change of scenery, that sort of thing. But if I'm the Nats, you would be selling low on Bryce Harper, and he is not the kind of player that you sell low on.
I got to tell you, I loved following it, though. I mean, every couple hours, it was a different story. He's being made available. No, he's not. Yes, he is. And then, of course, Rizzo shutting it all down this morning. All right, thanks, Lou, for the question. We appreciate it. We've got another fan question. What's your name and what's your question?
Hi, guys. I'm Elijah Smith. I'm from Michigan. Hey, I was wondering what your guys' favorite move of this trade deadline was.
Okay.
You're not driving while you're asking this question, are you?
No.
All right.
All right. You want to go first?
Well, I mean, we talked a lot about, I think the Archer trade is probably the one that goes at the top just because for both teams, you know, what it means. It's exciting. You don't see trades like that very often, and I think both major league teams arguably got better. You know, the Pirates had added bullpen depth with the trade with the Rangers earlier, so they're not even losing that much, you know, by getting rid of Glasnow. And Meadows wasn't in the big leagues anyway, or if he was, you know, it was just temporary. He wasn't playing every day, and they got a definite big league starter, and Chris Archer is going to help them down the stretch.
I'll throw one in. It maybe didn't happen over the last week, but it happened a couple weeks ago, and it was addressed a need for the Indians with the Brad Hand and Adam Simber deal back a couple of weeks ago. And now they gave up a heavy price.
Pretty good
Francisco Mejia. He's a really good player. He's going to be I think, a frontline catcher and offensive player. But, they control Brad Hand over the next couple of years. The lefty, he's a guy that fits right in the middle of the bullpen like Andrew Miller did. He could close for them next year. They have, Allen and Miller are both going to be free agents at the end of this year. And then Simber's a side armor who can get the ground ball out. And their bullpen was one of the worst in baseball. I think 29th out of 30th. So it was about as bad as it could be. So to get two pieces like that.
No bragging rights associated with that stat.
Right. I mean, they have to be able to compete with some of the big dogs like the Yankees and Red Sox and Astros in the American League. That gave them a better chance.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it was clear that the Indians felt that Francisco Mejia was never going to get it behind the plate. Right. They had moved him to the outfield. He was moving back and forth, which if you're really all in on developing him as a catcher, you don't do that. Right. The bat was ready. They were trying to figure out a way to do that. The Padres are letting him catch, and they're going to see what happens there. But I think the Indians' willingness to trade a guy who could be a really special offensive player was because they didn't think there was a place for him in their lineup at any time in the near future. And
it's smart when you're able to assess your own team or your own, at least, roster to know that, we don't have room for this player, so we might as well get something for him while we can.
And they're built to win now, so that makes sense in that regard.
All right, we are inside the Edward Jones chatting cage, the trade deadline edition. Our next question comes from Steph Martin 11 on Twitter. How do you think Alex Anthopoulos did during the deadline and how he's handled this first season with Atlanta? I like this question because I know AA well. I'm from Toronto. He's known for making big deals and deadline splashes. What's your assessment?
He's one of the more aggressive general managers, as you know, Jackie. So I would say one of his deals I really liked was the Adam Duvall deal. It was done late last night, and a little bit of a sleeper one because Duvall's having a little bit of a down year, but he can swing the bat. He can also play defense. They needed some offense. They added Brad Brock, who it was a buy low candidate as a reliever from the Orioles, and then they doubled down. They got Kevin Gausman and Darren O'Day. Now they picked up a lot of money, but they didn't give up any of their top prospects. They're like 9 or 10 deep of quality prospects. Jonathan knows this better than I do, but every single guy on that list they held on to, so they didn't trade their future, and they improved their team right now.
Yeah, I think they gave up 2 top 30 guys in the Gausman trade, but they were lower-level top 30 guys, none of the impact players, which, it is surprising often when a new general manager, especially an aggressive one, comes in and those aren't his guys in that system by and large.
Right.
You're more willing to be like, well, I don't have that institutional background with them. Yeah, I'll
it's not my guy.
Well,
so
I'll trade Austin Riley. I'll trade this guy. I'll trade that guy. And he didn't do that, so he kept the foundation of what's going to make them good for a long time, and kept all those high-level guys. And there are a lot of them. He goes more than 10 deep, really, of legitimate future big leaguers, and really only traded away nominal prospects and sort of the borderline end of the top 30 kind of guys, and really helping their big league roster out.
All right, guys, we've been getting some really good fan questions, so let's go to another one. What's your name and what's your question?
Hi, I'm Addison, and my question is for Jonathan. With all of the trades that the Orioles made this week, or this trade season, what do you think of the prospects they got in return?
I think they did really well quantity-wise. Sorry for the big sigh there.
Hey.
That was a pause, a pregnant pause right there.
I will say for him, it's been a long day. You've been at work a long time.
There have been a lot of. Luckily I don't do the Orioles top 30 list. Mike Rosenbaum does that list, and he has been really busy over the last couple weeks, and this last flurry of trades, including that Gausman trade, changed it. They needed a lot of players. They really did. So I think. Could they have done better in terms of bringing in an elite-level prospect or two? I'd like to say maybe, because we're not privy to the conversations they're having. Those guys may not have been available. The Gleyber Torreses of the world were not being made available. Yusniel Diaz is really good. Anyone who watched the Futures game saw him hit 2 homers in the Futures game, only the second time that's ever happened. No, he's got a chance to be an elite-level center fielder.
Right.
Beyond that, it was a lot of quantity, so it was good. They got in a lot of good players, many of whom are in their top 15. Their top 30 is completely remade. So they went from, you could have made the argument that they had the weakest farm system in baseball, and they're at least in the middle of the road now. And then you have to wait and see. There's some interesting guys that I want to see what happens to. Cody Carroll, I think he's in the big leagues now. They called him up. He's ready to get big league hitters out right now. He's a really good relief pitcher. Dean Kramer, guy they got from the Dodgers, lesser known. he took a big step forward this year. If he takes another step forward next year, then something we're talking about a mid-rotation starter, then everything looks a lot better to me.
All right, our next question comes from Gene T82 on Twitter. This one's for you, Duke.
Okay.
Which clubs so far do you think address their biggest needs for a postseason push?
So I think Cleveland was one of those. I mentioned them earlier. But I thought that the Yankees were also, when you look at, they needed help in their starting rotation. They needed a boost there. I thought getting Happ really helped round out their rotation.
And he's good against the Sox, right? Like,
He's been good against the Sox.
Against them.
He's been good in the division. He's pitched well in the postseason over the years. So I love that. I love Zach Britton. You know, I was watching him over the last month. He's pitched a lot better as of late. So they got more depth, and they added a good. He gets righties out too, but from the left side. And then adding Lynn late, I thought was a little bit of a sleeper because over his last 12 starts, his ERA is 3.75. So on the surface, his ERA is over 5. You look at it and go, oh, he's had a bad year, and he really did for the first couple of weeks of the season. I had a chance to catch up with him today, and he's made a slight change to his delivery, moved on the rubber, and now the last 12 starts has been good. So he gives them a chance to pitch in the starting rotation, could pitch out of the bullpen. So I thought they did a great job of filling needs on the pitching front.
All right, we are inside the Edward Jones Chatting Cage Trade Deadline TD special here at MLB Network. Our next question comes from Twitter. It's Alan Sherman 6. And obviously, every time deadline day comes around, there are 2 in Major League Baseball. This is the non-waiver deadline. Alan wants to know, of the Major League players in the game today, who could you see on the move before August 31st, if anyone?
Wow, last year we saw Verlander. That was the big deal. It's really, if you look around and there are teams that have high salary guys, but maybe weren't moved at the deadline that could end up deciding to move them, or teams that fall out of the race a little bit later. Coming to mind, I'm trying to think of teams that Matt Harvey got a lot of play around the deadline. He didn't get moved. Right. He would be a perfect candidate in August for somebody to trade for him. I don't think Homer Bailey would be a guy. He's not as good. His salary's higher. I don't think there's enough interest there. But those are the type guys out there.
Is that more likely? I'm sorry, I'm just cutting you off here. But is that more likely to happen with a pitcher than a position player? That type of deal, like before August 31st?
You know what? I think some. When you get some position players get through too.
I'm totally deferring to you on this one.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that
only
either
because
way.
Pitching and the importance in the postseason. I just wonder if it might be easier to do with a pitcher.
Well, I think both will get. Usually the high salary guys get through most of the time, and so that's when you're able to do a deal, and then it becomes, all right, how much money are you willing to take back in the deal to do it? So I think that either side, either position player or pitcher, we do see deals. We don't see a lot of deals, though, in August.
No,
we see
don't.
One or two. So, the Verlander one was an exception, and I don't really expect there to be any real big deals this year.
You mean you don't think Bryce Harper's going to get...
I don't know.
Let me just start the rumor mill again.
Start it up.
He could slip through waivers.
You never know.
He won't get through waivers, but whoever claims him in the National League, they can try to work out a deal.
There you go.
All right, one more question I just had to throw that out there, right? All right, one more question from Twitter. Victor L31. This one's for you. Which deadline deal, prospect-wise, might have the biggest impact for their team?
Well, I think the Machado trade for the Orioles is the one that really jumps out, just because they got 5 guys, and Yusniel Diaz, as we discussed before, has a chance to be really good. He automatically went in at the top of their top 30 list. He was the only top 100 prospect that they got in the trade. But I think that specific trade, when you're trading a Manny Machado, even if it's a 2-month rental, you better get at least a lot of players in return if you're not going to get a number of high-level players in return. And getting the players that they got in back of Diaz, I think there's some really good players. Kramer, I mentioned. Zach Pop is a decent arm too. Yeah. There are some interesting guys that they got behind them. Some more wait-and-see guys, but that would be the one deal where I think a team flipped the switch on one trade and automatically brought in an influx of talent.
All right, and I'm being told now that Dozier to the Dodgers is official. So any quick comments on that?
Well,
I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier,
but I mean, I don't know how long Turner's going to be out.
Deal.
We don't know.
That's all I'm being told.
We don't know who was in the deal.
Is that Dozier to the Dodgers? Luke Raley?
Oh,
yeah,
Raley. Yeah, Raley's interesting.
We do have the names.
I was just figuring that out before I came over here. But Raley will be right in around 19 or 20 on the Twins top 30 list. An interesting bat with some power in Double-A. So, I think it's a nice little trade for the Dodgers helps them.
Oh,
They didn't have to give up a
for sure.
ton. They didn't have to give up a ton, but the Twins got an interesting bat in return.
Yeah.
All
I
right,
mean,
well,
you added Manny and
Yeah.
Dozier to the lineup, and Turner. I don't know how long he's going to be back, but when he does come back, that's a legit offense.
And where will Machado be next year?
They'll stay in Los Angeles.
You think so?
I do.
Philly.
Oh,
That's my guess.
Okay. Time will tell.
I'm going to put some dough on it.
I
do
think you
not.
guys should
I got
right
all that.
now.
Are you
Why
weighing
not?
in on one?
Nope.
I could see him wanting to be on the East Coast. That's the only reason why.
That's
I
why.
pushed
Between
that
now
bet.
and then, there's so much that can change and that can happen and sway what his decision or where he wants to be. But it's been a slice hanging out with you guys. I appreciate it. It's been a long day for you guys. Thanks to everyone watching for your questions, whether they were on Twitter or through video. This has been the Edward Jones Chatting Cage Trade Deadline Edition. And by the way, these guys are both on Instagram. So if you want to hit them up on Instagram, you can do so.
Get on it.
Jim Duquette, I believe, with an underscore between
right.
the first and last name, and I might mess this up,
That's
but
right.
Jonathan Mayo, OB3?
No O, just the B3.
Oh, just B3.
Jonathan Mayo,
B3.
B3.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, Jonathan Mayo,
Sneaky.
B3. A little bit. It's been a slice. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next Edward Jones Chatting Cage. We'll see you then.